Your real estate agent can make or break your transaction experience, but more importantly, your outcome. So, how do you interview agents the right way? Whether you are moving across town or across the country, I'm here to give you the key questions that you have to ask if you are considering working with any realtor. Hey, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sarah Schultz. I am a real estate professional in the Northern Nevada market, serving Reno, Sparks, Carson City, and all of the surrounding areas. And as I mentioned on today's video, I'm going to be giving you important questions for interviewing an agent, but also some red flags to watch out for. Without further ado, I'm going to dive right in. This video is super important. Who you work with matters. Let that be kind of the overshadowing umbrella of this entire thing, because all agents are not the same, and more importantly, the results that you end up with are not the same. Working with the wrong agent can cost you not only time, stress, resources, but it can also cost you tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. So you really want to get that right. The first question that you're going to want to ask is, how long have you worked in this market? And there are a few qualifying questions after that that kind of go under the same umbrella, but you want to know that the person that you are entrusting with potentially the biggest financial transaction that you'll ever do in your life is somebody who has experience in the market that you are shopping in or selling in. And not only that, but that they are full-time, right? Because there's a difference between an agent who is in the trenches, on the ground, doing deals, negotiating on behalf of their clients day in, day out, and perhaps an agent who kind of does it as a side hustle or has another full-time career that has been licensed for a long time but isn't necessarily full-time. I'm sorry to tell you if this is bad news, but your cousin or your uncle's friend who's a realtor, who's a family friend that is also like a full-time something else, they're not going to get you the same results that a full-time agent is, who really spends their time fine-tuning their skills, honing in on the market data, analyzing it, and also puts into practice their negotiations. Because I'm here to tell you, I am one of those agents that is full-time all the time, and every single transaction, there's something to learn, right? Every transaction brings a new set of challenges and circumstances and things that you need to work through. And if you're not kind of always doing that, you're frankly out of practice and may not have the wherewithal to adequately protect your clients. Not only that, but you're going to want to ask, is your client list more buyer or seller heavy? Because listing a home and marketing it, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I am saying that they are very different skill sets. Listing a home and marketing it effectively, bringing out the storytelling and managing to attract the right buyer for that home is a very different skill set than, say, helping someone relocate cross country and helping them understand the difference between one neighborhood and the next, understanding the KPIs and days on market, all the data points for one neighborhood versus another, and helping them go through the due diligence process, understanding which inspections need to be done, how to make those contacts, really having vendors on hand who are ready and willing to serve and are reputable. Those are very different skill sets. And I'm not saying that the same agent cannot possess both, but typically you have an agent that's usually more buyer or seller heavy. And if somebody does serve both, as I do, I'm not saying you can't do it or it can't be done. You're really going to want to vet them and look at their transaction history. Okay, on this deal, did you represent the buyer or the seller? What was the outcome? What were the wins? It's okay to get into the weeds, because an agent that is forthcoming and honest and is actually working in the market every day should be able to give you those statistics without any problems. As a very general and vague benchmark, you're going to want to work with someone who either has at least 3 years of full-time experience, or if they're newer to the game, that doesn't necessarily mean it should be a deal breaker. But the or part of that either or is that if they are newer, you want to make sure that they have a mentor or a broker or somebody who's going to oversee the transaction as a whole, that's going to kind of handhold with them. It's okay to be learning new skills. We do it every day, right? And everyone who's now experienced at some point had their first day in real estate, and I'm no different. But you want to make sure that there's somebody that you can contact, that your agent can contact if they don't know the answer, that it's going to be easy for them to get the answer. And a broker or a mentor would be sufficient in that regard. The next one is going to be about transaction volume. Now, you have to understand that what you see on the internet can be very misleading. How many transactions did you do last year? That would be a great question to ask, but you need to understand that the response can kind of be misleading, as I just said. If an agent does at least 10 transactions a year and they are full time, that's probably a pretty solid benchmark. It means that they're working full time. And if they're a solo agent, that's probably a pretty healthy baseline. Now, you do see agents, if you go onto Zillow, you guys, if you didn't know this, you can go onto Zillow, look up an agent, check their profile, and see how many transactions they've done. Just be aware, though, that anything that's off market, like if they're an agent that does a lot of fix and flips or off market deals, that they're not going to register on Zillow. So you may not get the full picture, but you're going to get an idea. But if you're seeing a really high transaction volume, like I'm talking above 25, 30 deals a year, you should understand that that agent may very well be part of a team, and you may be seeing the data for the whole team on Zillow, because sometimes that's just how it syndicates to these Realtor.com, Zillow, Redfin websites and the like. And you also want to understand that if your agent is on a team, they are, I hate to say the word spoon-fed, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. A high transaction volume in general means that they're working and they understand how transactions work, but an agent who's on a team is often spoon-fed leads and spoon-fed transactions, and it's kind of this like hustle culture, turn and burn mentality. I've been on a team, full disclosure. I've been on a pretty big mega team in our market where it did function that way. And I'm not going to go as far as to say it's quality versus quality, but like it kind of is, because those team members are often incentivized as far as like, if you hit these targets, these transactional volumes, you're rewarded with everything from dinner at a restaurant to like a trip to Cabo. I'm not even exaggerating. That is like a whole thing in our market. Like if you're in the top producers club in these teams, you get taken on a trip to Cabo. And honestly, I can't think of anything worse than going to Cabo with everyone you work with. That's another video for another time. However, you just want to kind of clarify, like, okay, I see you have a lot of transactions. Are you on a team? What does that look like? If I'm working with you, who else am I going to be working with? And that leads me to my next question, which is about communication. If I'm working with you, are you going to make me sign a contract and then pawn me off to somebody else? Do you have an assistant? Do you have a transaction coordinator? Are there other people who are going to be like other important points of contact throughout this deal? Because that's going to really change your overall experience. One thing I always tell people when we make our initial point of contact is I have marketing support. I have somebody that takes these videos that I film and makes them shiny and edits them and puts them on YouTube. I have marketing support in the form of somebody that helps me with like social media content and branding and all of that stuff. But as far as contracts and the really important transactional things that happen from the time that you make an offer or the time that you close on a deal, like all of that is handled by me. And I have worked with transaction coordinators in the past personally, and this is a personal choice. I didn't like it. I'm way too OCD and neurotic to have other people touching really important documents, but that's a personal choice. And it's not to say that somebody can't effectively deliver a solid product or do a good job for you if they have a team or a transaction coordinator. But I think that it would be really worthwhile for you to understand what you're getting into before you decide to sign a buyer representation agreement or exclusive right to sell contract. Those are the two main contracts that are going to bind you to your agent. Another thing around communication that you're going to want to understand is, what is your availability? What is your main mode of communication? Are we mostly going to communicate via text or phone call or Zoom or email? What are your business hours? Do you have business hours? I always tell people that for better or for worse, I'm always attached to this. It's just my lot in life. And I'm not complaining, right? Because although I always have to keep an eye on my phone or my watch, it's like, I know I can be at every school field trip for my daughter. I can be at every school play. There's a balance there, but you want to really vet your agent as far as like, hey, if I have an emergency at 9:30 at night, are you going to answer my call or need something? Are you going to take 3 business days to get back to me? Those are important things to understand. And there's not a right or a wrong answer. It's just more about being informed and clarifying what it's going to look like when you walk into the fire, so to speak. All right, the next one is probably going to hit home for you if you're watching this. Do you work with relocators often? How do you support out-of-state buyers? What does that look like? You're going to need an agent if you're buying remotely and relying on maybe like one visit to town in advance or less. Maybe you're even buying sight unseen, which I don't recommend, but it does happen. You want to be paired with an agent who is tech savvy. You want an agent who can facilitate virtual tours, Zoom consultations, e-signing platforms, which I think at this day and age, everybody's pretty much doing that. I think you'd be hard pressed to find an agent that's actually going to make you come into an office and sign with a pen, although I'm sure it does happen. But overall, you want somebody who's savvy and quick to react, because time is money. And in a transaction, the difference of 30 minutes could make or break your situation, whether or not you get the house or another buyer does, whether or not you get the buyer to buy your listing or they move on. I mean, time is really, really important and critical. Understanding what you're buying or, the whole relocation process, understanding how to align a timeline of a departing home out of state with a purchase of a home here. Those are all things that are critical if you are relocating. So make sure that you vet your agent for that. All right, let's transition over to some red flags to look out for. The first would be an agent who is vague about their experience. And as I mentioned, it's not bad to be new, right? Like, it's okay to start a new career, and everyone who is experienced at one moment in time was new. I think it would be better, in my opinion, if I were hiring an agent and they were forthcoming about the fact that, like, hey, listen, I'm brand new to real estate. However, I have this broker who's going to handhold with me through this entire transaction. She's been in the business for 30 years and can answer all my questions. Great. Like, I feel like that's really great. Not only were they honest and forthcoming, but they've also covered their ground and have somebody to kind of oversee and have resources if they have questions. I think that that's fine, but you want to make sure that the person isn't being vague about, like, well, I'm really experienced, but they won't tell you like when they were licensed, their transaction volume, etc. Like, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting an honest response and that people aren't kind of like trying to pull one over on you. Flag number 2, and this one is more for sellers, I'd say, than relocators, but you don't want an agent who's going to overpromise on price. Like, I think a lot of agents go into listing appointments with, I'm getting this contract signed come hell or high water. Like, somebody is going to work with me. I'm going to get this listing. And maybe they walk in and the seller's like, this home is worth $1 million. And even if the agent knows it's worth $900,000, they're like, great, let's list it at $1 million and see what happens. That's a red flag, because it's going to lead to price reductions, longer days on market, and potentially the property being stigmatized to potential buyers in the market who will start to wonder what's wrong with it. So you want an agent who's going to be forthcoming with price, but not just like out of the blue, I think it's worth this or that. You want to see the data, see the comps, see the days on market, understand their analysis of what led them to that conclusion. All right, here's a really big red flag. If they're slow to respond to you during the interview process, if you're considering multiple agents and you don't get like a pretty quick response, how do you think it's going to work when it's the 12th hour and you've got a huge disaster in your transaction and you can't get a hold of your agent? How do you think that's going to pan out? Like, not very well. So if they are not showing their best version of themselves, how they present, how they communicate, how fast they respond to you in the interview when they haven't even locked you in yet, run. You're never going to get better than the initial consultation, because once the contract is signed and you're bound to them, who knows what's going to happen? I hate to say that about potential industry colleagues, but like, let's be realistic. You want somebody who's going to answer you. All right, next red flag. If they have no online reviews or track record, it's not automatically a red flag, but it could be. Like I said, if they're new and they're forthcoming about that and they've got this great mentor and maybe you even have the mentor's number in case there's an emergency, anything like that, that's okay. But if they're telling you, I've been in the industry for 5, 10, 15 years and there's no record of them online or homes they've sold, or I mean, at this day and age, honestly, if you're not on social media as a realtor, what are you even doing? If they don't exist on the internet, probably not a great sign. All right, last but not least, a lot of real estate involves being a good listener. If you get the sense when you're talking to an agent for the first time that they are not listening to you and hearing your needs, it may be a sign that commission breath is on the horizon. And at the end of the day, there's nothing more important in the transaction, right, than getting your buyer or seller's needs met. And if they can't even take the time to listen to what your needs are, then how are they going to do that? That would be a pretty big red flag in my book. All right, you guys, that was a lot to take in. What questions do you have? You can drop them in the comments below. If you are thinking about making a move and are considering interviewing agents, I would love to be among your interview list. You can book a free call with me. There's a link to do that in the description box below. We don't even need to call it a formal interview. We can just get your questions answered, see what might be your next and best steps, help you put a strategy together. And if you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button. I put out new videos every single week about the Northern Nevada lifestyle, the Reno Sparks housing market, and of course, all things to do about buying and selling real estate. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.